Good morning, long time no see. It's Friday the 25th of January. It's about 11 o'clock. I've come over to the River Avon today for a spot of roach and dace fishing. And I popped over this morning to have a look. I've got quite a bit of flow coming down the river at the moment, which is really good. I was hoping to fish the stick float, but unfortunately I've got the wind is coming across at me. You can't see it much at the moment, but every time it gusts up it's blowing in at me. I'm not going to be able to keep the stick float out there, so I've decided to opt for the waggler. And I'm going to fish two approaches today. I'm going to start off fishing shallow with an insert crystal. I'm going to fish about 4 foot deep, bulk shot round the float, a couple of shots strung out down the line, small shot, just to make it sink slowly through the water, because I've seen a few fish topping. So I'll start off shallow and try that, and I'm going to loose feed casters while I'm doing that, and then a little bit later on I'm going to change over to a thicker topped crystal float, and I'm going to put in some hemp, and I'm going to fish deeper and try and scrape along the bottom and see if I can get a better stamp of fish from off the same line. The reason why I'm using the thick top crystal is because when you're tripping bottom, the float doesn't tend to get pulled under as easily as it does with the insert crystals. So I prefer to use the insert crystals for shallow water and the thicker top for when I'm fishing down deep. I'm not starting with too light a float as well, because as I said, the wind's coming towards me. Fortunately, as it's coming towards me, it's just blowing slightly upstream, which is an advantage because I'll be able to leave the line on the top hopefully. But I'm starting off with about a 2.5 A+ waggler, quite long, about 12 inches long. So it'll get down, I can get the line out the way of the wind, and I can control the float a little bit more. If I tried fishing with a very light waggler, I wouldn't be able to control the float at all. Anyway, I'm going to get set up now, and then once I've got set up, I'll talk to you in a bit. Right, it's stopped raining at last, so I'm finally able to put the umbrella away one moment. So that I can cast a bit easier and also make filming a bit easier. The trials and tribulations. Right, let's have a go. As I said, I'm about 4 foot deep, do shot down the line. I'm going to sink the line because it's a downstream wind, as I said. And hopefully, yes, there's a little bit of interest. An awful lot of rubbish coming down here today as well. As I say, I'll feed about every 3 or 4 casts to start off with and see how we do with that. I'm seeing some signs of life, so hopefully there's 1 or 2 fish about. I've left it a bit late today, but I wanted to fish up until almost dark, so won't feed too much hemp. I'm mainly going to feed casters. Move over to more hemp when I start going nearer the bottom. I don't want to feed too heavy, or otherwise all I'll do is push the fish down. But we're right on the bend of the river here, so the flow comes down, it tends to push into this bank. I've actually seen 1 or 2 fish topping, so that's why I've started up on the top. But it's really racing on down through here. Quite surprised actually, just how fast the flow is. There's one. That's the first one. It is actually a little dace. I'll catch 1 or 2 more and then I'll turn the camera off for a little while. And I'm getting a few fish come to the caster now. Hasn't taken too long, to be honest. But the wind is making it very difficult indeed. A little bit of hemp out. I said every 3 or 4 casts I'm putting a few casters out. Not getting enough bites at the moment to warrant feeding any heavier. But this wind is absolutely awful. Yeah, there's one. And there's a roach at last. It's been dace in the main so far. Really having to sink the line here. Leave any on the surface and it's just grabbing it and it's just dragging the float straight along. But the fish are very high up in the water. There's another one. I know something, I wouldn't want to be holding a pole on a day like today, or trying to. But we're getting a few fish now, that's the main thing. Missed that one. Still, it's lovely to be out. Yeah, here's one. Amazingly high up in the water. Another roach. Good. That's what we came for. But at least it stopped raining, that's the main thing. Yep, there's another one. Coming from quite far down the swim. Travelling a good 10 or 15 yards. Oh, that's a nice one. Lovely dace. There's also some carp in this section, and when we get a mild spell I plan to come back and have a go for the carp. But as you know, it's going into some real cold weather towards the end of this week, so it won't be for a little while. every now and again I cast a little bit further across the river and wind back, and the reason for that is if you keep casting into the same spot all the time, eventually the line ends up bedding on the spool. So missed that one on the drop. I was looking at the reel then explaining to you. What happens is that the line ends up getting bedded on the spool, and what happens is instead of the line paying freely off the spool, you're watching the float and the float goes under, you think you've got a bite, and what's actually happened, it's just the line has got trapped on the spool and has pulled the float under. But because you're watching the float, you don't notice, and you end up striking up false bites. Just reaching that point where it's almost too windy to float fish, really, because of the rate that it's dragging it through. Anyway, I'm getting more dace than I am roach, actually. I knew there was a few dace in here, but the dace seems to be further up the swim and the roach seems to be further down. Anyway, I think we'll turn the camera off for a bit